Well, hiya, BookTube. Bill Ruttenberg here with the Ruttenberg Library. I wanted to come to you today with an original tag, and it's going to be all about my man, Abraham Lincoln. Now, most of you that follow me know that I really love studying the Civil War, and probably the number one person that I've read the most about, that I enjoy reading about over and over and over again, is Abraham Lincoln. So I've had lots of questions on the channel, through the comments section, through emails, asking for recommendations about for Lincoln books. You know, what would I recommend, and for a novice reader, for somebody who's read a lot of history, you know, all ends of the spectrum. And so I have been wanting to put together this tag, but my good friend Paul Salley over in St. Louis, a good friend of mine who, through the comments section, we've gotten to know each other. He's sent me books over the last few years. He wrote a book himself that I have talked about on this channel before. He sent me an email saying, "Hey, would you do that Lincoln tag?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then, like everything else in life, it seems, I put it off and put it off and put it off. And finally, he just kind of got after it, and he sent me a whole list of questions. He goes, "Hey, I want you to do that tag. Here's the questions. I've already done them for you. All you got to do is fill out the answers. Add in anything that you want." And so I was like, okay, I could do this. And of course, I put it off. Again, life happens. Not that I didn't want to do it, just life happens. So anyway, I'm sitting here in front of the Lincoln shelves. These two bookshelves are almost fully loaded with Lincoln books. Almost all of it is Lincoln. I would say probably 85% of it is Lincoln. A couple of the things up at the top are some Civil War things, but most of these are on Lincoln, or maybe even like something dealt with the assassination or with his family. But mostly Lincoln, as you can see. Now, I've went through and I've got, 15 questions here. So this is going to be probably a longer tag. So if you like Lincoln, yay. If not, well, it's going to be a little bit longer tag. Sorry about that. But I would love for some of you who are well-read in Lincoln. I know there's several of you out there that have read a bunch of Lincoln books. And, he's one of the most wrote about characters or figures in U.S. history. And, him and George Washington, there's just thousands of books out there on them. And I haven't read them all, obviously. I haven't even read all of them that are on my shelves. I've read a lot of them, but not all of them. And basically, I want to do this to give you guys recommendations, but I also want to do this so I can get recommendations from people. Because, I want to know what else can I read about Lincoln that would be, good to add to my collection, or maybe something I need to pull off my shelf immediately and get started on. So that's kind of the idea behind this tag. I give credit to Paul Salley for nudging me in that direction. And I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you participate in this. Now, as far as my memory goes, I only know of 2 booktubers that might be able to answer all the questions. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, so I'm going to tag 2, but I want everybody to participate. If you've read enough on Lincoln, I want you to participate. So I'm going to tag Steve Donoghue, because I know he's read enough. And I'm going to tag Peg over at the History Shelf, because I think she's read enough on Lincoln. I don't know if she's read enough individual biographies, but we're going to find out. So if the 2 of you would do this tag, that would be just phenomenal. So anyway, here is the Abraham Lincoln book tag, an original, with the questions coming from Paul Salley. So, what was your first book about Abraham Lincoln? Okay, so as I turn to the shelves, I'm going to turn and pull them off and put them right back on so I don't make a big mess. But I pull them out because I know I'm going to talk about those. I hope that's okay. So the very first one that I can remember reading is from Sterling North. And it is, I have a couple of these landmark editions. One looks a little better than the other. This one's got the paper cover with it. This is just a naked hardback. But they're from the Landmark biography series. Landmark books is American history books of all sorts of range in topics. But they did a bunch of biographies that I read a bunch of in elementary school. And I know I read the one on Lincoln. And so this would probably be my first one I ever read. All right, so question number 2. What book really sparked your interest to learn more about Abraham Lincoln's life? Now, I got I'm going to go out on a limb, maybe a Christmas present, maybe a birthday present. I'm not 100% sure when I got this one. But I got this great big coffee table book. It's Lincoln, an illustrated biography, and it comes from Philip Coonhart Jr., Philip Coonhart III, and Peter Coonhart. The Coonhart family they are the people who own all of the negatives, all the old glass negatives of Lincoln. They had a whole bunch of these pictures. It's a really neat story. I watched a biography on this where they owned, they were going to clean out this photography studio, or it was a warehouse or something, and it had boxes and boxes of these old glass negatives from way back in the 1800s when they first were doing photography, and they were going to throw them away. And the Coonhart family took them and said, "We'll take them." And when they got to going through them, all of your old photos of Abraham Lincoln, all your classic shots, are from those glass negatives. They almost lost history by just throwing them away. And so this whole book, has all kinds of stuff. It's a basic biography of Lincoln, but it's all done through different photos of the time period. A lot of them of Lincoln, but there's also a bunch of Civil War stuff in here. I don't know if you can see. But this book, if you can sit down with this coffee table book, I'd highly recommend this one. This is one of my all-time favorite books on Lincoln. I've read this cover to cover. I use this in my classroom. There's an account in here of William Herndon talking about what it was like to work with Abraham Lincoln, and I use that in my classroom as a primary source. And there's just all kinds of stuff I've pulled out of this book that has been very, very helpful to me in my personal reading and my academic career, for that matter. All right, so that brings us to number 3. What is the best book about Abe's childhood or his early life up until he goes into politics? Okay, now I will admit I really, really struggled with this question because I didn't have one book. I just couldn't think of one. I know I've read stuff on his early life, but I just didn't have one that was sticking out, with like big neon lights saying "pick me," about his early life. And so what I am going to pick is a book I've actually not read yet. I had this sent to me and I was very grateful for this present. If I can grab it here. Hang on a minute. It's completely behind me. Oh, there it is. Right there. And I'm going to go with Michael Burlingame's Abraham Lincoln, A Life, and this is the first volume. And I picked this one, even though I haven't read it. I've read other Michael Burlingame books, and his work is extremely detailed, and just really love his stuff. And I'm just going out on a limb on this one. This is the only question that I couldn't really hardcore get an answer for, but I'm going to go out on a limb, and I think it's probably a safe bet that Burlingame did an excellent job with his early life. So that's the one I'm going to choose. It is a thick book, but man, he's a good writer. So that's my take on that question. If you've got ones that stick out to you, BookTube, please let me know. Fill me in. I'm always looking for new Lincoln books. All right. Question number 4. What book does the best at highlighting Abe's personality? So I chose this book right up here. This is a reprint, but it's Abraham Lincoln, A History, Volume 1 by John Hay and John Nicolay. Now, they were his personal secretaries when he was president, and they wrote this series that most of your libraries have these. It's a 10-volume series. And I really wanted it for my collection, but every time I found them online, they were extremely expensive to get the old ones. And so I went with this reprint edition, and I've been lucky to find them on sale and marked down. I've got this one, and where did volume 2 go? Hang on. What did I do with it? It's not in the same spot. It should be, but it's not, BookTube. This is a disorganized bookshelf. What Well, anyway, I've got volume 2, but it's in hardback, and I'm not seeing it. But it's in hardback. I got it for, was it 80 or 90% off, like next to nothing. And when I see, stuff like this for low prices like that, I pick them up, or I try to anyway. So anyway, I pick this one for learning about Lincoln because there's so many like insightful things that these two guys were able to pick up just being around him all the time. This is a good series, and it's an easy read. They're not like super scholarly technical things that are hard to read. They're easy to read, so highly recommend those. Most of your libraries have a set of them. Number 5, what is the best political pre-Civil War and Civil War era book? So best book on him. What is the best just on politics. Okay. Sorry. I was misreading my stuff there. All right, so I chose for this smaller book, Abraham Lincoln and the Second American Revolution by James McPherson. McPherson's one of my favorite authors of the Civil War era. I think he's just tremendous. His Battle Cry for Freedom is one of the best books ever written, and I would say that for a one-volume history of the Civil War, there's not much better, if there is anything better. I absolutely love it. But anyway, I chose his book, Abraham Lincoln and the Second American Revolution, because this really focuses on what the war was all about. The Second American Revolution, actually taking strides towards what the Declaration said and trying to put them into action and bring equality. I'm fully aware of BookTube. It's an ongoing, evolving thing for American democracy. I get that. I'm not saying it's perfect, but what Lincoln was trying to accomplish was huge strides in the right direction. And he was not a perfect man by any means. I fully admit to that. Not a perfect man, but he was doing such radical things that nobody else had ever done before him. There were people in the House and Senate that wanted to do some more radical things than what he was accomplishing, but he was actually, what they wanted to do wasn't probably something you could accomplish at that point. The American society wasn't ready for it overall. But what Lincoln was getting done, he was getting done. He was making those strides, if that makes any sense. And he was able to politically weave his way in and out of different issues that came up, trying to make everybody happy, or at least keep them from being totally turning against him, if that's a way of looking at. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying here. But anyway, that was one I chose. And then, let me put that back. That was one I chose. And then Prelude to Greatness, Lincoln in the 1850s. This is, please excuse this was an old used college book. But anyway, Prelude to Greatness, Lincoln in the 1850s by Don Fehrenbacher. Don Fehrenbacher was a wonderful Civil War historian. Absolutely love his stuff. And this is talking about him before the presidency, all of the major issues that happened in the 1850s, how he dealt with them. And I really like them because these volumes are not like super duper thick. They're very readable, very concise and to the point. And so I like this one. I recommend this to anybody who's asking for recommendations on the antebellum period. Oh, there we go. Love that book. Actually, I'm going to pull that one out because I'm going to use that again later. Let's see, number 6. What is a book or two that you bought during a trip to a Lincoln site? This could be like the Abraham Lincoln Museum, his home, Washington, D.C. So I bought some slave narratives when I was at Gettysburg. And I consider that partially a Lincoln site because of the Gettysburg Address. But I bought some slave narratives while I was there. I really like those. I don't have them on this shelf. They're on a different shelf upstairs. But they're very interesting. If you want to get into the lives of slaves, read their narratives because they don't pull any punches. They tell it like it is. It's probably the best way to learn about slavery is read those slave narratives. Number 7. What is the best book that showcases Lincoln's military strategy as commander-in-chief. And for this, I went with another James McPherson book, if I can find it. Oh, here it is. Tried by War. Abraham Lincoln as commander-in-chief. And that's what the entire book is about. It goes through, what he thought should be the strategies, how he worked with his generals, just all that kind of stuff. And then, learning as you go, because obviously he wasn't really a big military man when he came into the presidency. So he had to learn a lot of it on the go. And he did a lot of reading from the Library of Congress and learned and listened to people. He looked at other people's mistakes. Yeah, George McClellan. Yeah, that was a mistake. Anyway, we don't need to get into that right now. We're going to keep this book tab short. But anyway, Tried by War. I would recommend that book. That's a good one. Where did I get that? There it is. Number 8. What's the best book if somebody wants to learn about Lincoln's family, such as Mary Todd or Robert Todd or any of the kids, really? And I always like this book. This is from Ruth Painter Randall, who was the wife of J.G. Randall, famous Lincoln historian from the early part of the 20th century. But I picked Lincoln's Sons. I liked this one. This focused on the family, focused on obviously Lincoln's sons. But Abraham Lincoln had 4 sons: Eddie, Willie, Tad, and Robert. Now, for the first time, the lives of these boys, so different in their destinies, have been brought together with sympathy and understanding by the author of Mary Lincoln, which I have somewhere. I have that book as well. But anyway, I really liked Lincoln's Sons. It tells the story. It's very easy to understand with her narrative. You'll notice I'm like that on a lot of books. Scholarly books have their place, but I like a good narrative that's fast-paced and gets to the point and doesn't try to overwhelm you with really big words, because I'm not smart enough for really big words. So I like fast narratives that are simple for the simple man. The other one that I chose was House of Abraham, Lincoln and the Todds, a family divided by war. And I thought this did a wonderful job. Stephen Barry did a wonderful job of explaining the background of Mary Lincoln and her life in Kentucky before she moved to Illinois and met Lincoln and got married. And of course, it tells a little bit about his background too. But then it's really interesting their tie-ins as they head towards the Civil War and then through the Civil War, on how Mary Todd's family was totally ripped apart by the war, and just how Lincoln and her both did that. It was a fascinating read. I thought it was pretty good. I would recommend that one. Number 9. So moving right along here. What is your favorite Lincoln book that details a year in the life of Abe? Such as a book about his final months as president. So basically a smaller biography, more of a keyhole history, if you will. So one of my all-time favorites is, here it is, Lincoln, President-Elect, Abraham Lincoln in the Great Secession Winter of 1860-61 by Harold Holzer. Harold Holzer is one of the all-time best Lincoln historians. Good Civil War historian too, but he really, really focuses on Lincoln. He's got a ton of books. You could fill a whole bookshelf with just his stuff, or at least a shelf, if not the whole thing. But love his stuff. This one focuses, just like it says, on the Secession Winter. So from the time Lincoln is elected, so November, December, January, February, over that winter, it really focuses on everything and the pressures that he was under to speak out and spell out what he's going to do. And through the whole book, he continuously told people, look at my previous speeches. I've already told you what my plans are. You're not going to trick me into saying something else. I look at my previous speeches. I've already laid out the game plan. And they wanted him to speak out about what he was going to do in March when he took over. And he's like, hey, I'm not the president right now. That's James Buchanan. He's got to do what he's got to do. If you want to know what my plans are after that, look at my speeches. That was kind of a main theme in this book. But this was a really, really good book. Highly recommended. A little bit thicker one. Let's see, over 600 pages. but I thought it read real fast. Harold Holzer does an excellent job of explaining stuff. Really good stuff. I used a lot of that in my my American history class. A lot of stuff out of there. Another one that I find to be really good, if I can get all turned around here, is a book by Bruce Chadwick, who is a favorite author of mine. I've read most of his stuff. He's a journalist who writes about different history topics, and I just enjoy how he writes. He tells a good story. But his book is, and I don't know why I don't have the jacket for this, but anyway, 1858, Abraham Lincoln, Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, Ulysses Grant, and the war they failed to see. But it all focuses on that year, 1858, and all the multitude of things that were going on during that year. It was a very pivotal year. Of course, with Lincoln, it's really focusing on the debates with Stephen Douglas. But there's all kinds of things going on with these other gentlemen as well that's really, you know, kind of setting the table for everything to follow. Another Bruce Chadwick book that I really like, and that one's behind my chair. Give me a second here. Is Lincoln for President. And this book focuses on the 1860 campaign. And I use a ton of stuff out of this one. An unlikely candidate, an audacious strategy, and the victory no one saw coming. And I absolutely love this cover too, by the way. It's one of my favorite Lincoln covers. But this just, it talks about his, we call it a second place strategy. And when he headed into the convention, he was not the number one guy on the ballot. Matter of fact, he was pretty far down the ballot. And one of the main things his people, his supporters did is they went to all the other candidates that were running for the Republican nomination, and they said, hey, you know, if you don't have enough votes to get that number one spot, when you drop out, will you give us your electoral or your electoral votes? Will you, or not electoral, your votes at the convention? Will you send those our way? Can we be your number two pick? And he did that with all of them, or his people did that with all of them. And sure enough, very quickly, William Seward, who was considered extremely radical at the time, he stays right about where he was, but then Lincoln's votes, as the votes come in, or as the different tallies come in, his votes go up and he ends up winning the nomination. And it was a very unique way to win the nomination for the Republicans in 1860. All right, BookTube, I had to do a little bit of editing in my video. Got to going through this and I realized I totally forgot a question. And it's probably the question that Paul wanted me to ask the most. This is one of them we talk about, or we've discussed quite a bit. And so I wanted to come back and make sure I put this in. Sorry about this. I'll edit this all in so that it works. But anyway, the question is, this is number 10. What is your go-to book or books about the Lincoln assassination and the events surrounding it? Booth, Ford's Theater, The Conspirators, Aftermath. Okay, so I got a whole stack of them here. One of my all-time favorites is one of the older ones that's been put out, and it is The Day Lincoln Was Shot by Jim Bishop. This is a hour-by-hour, minute-by-minute account of everything that was going on that day when he was shot. Now this is it's like I said, an older book, but I still think very much has a lot of merit in reading about the assassination. Highly recommend that one. Another book is about an assassination attempt that happened before that Lincoln was even president, and that's the Hour of Peril, the secret plot to murder Lincoln before the Civil War by Daniel Stashower. And this took place right before he was ready to come into Washington, D.C. The people of Baltimore had a plot put together to capture him at the train as it came in and pull him off the train and do away with him. And Alan Pinkerton, who was the detective helping to protect him, caught him in Pennsylvania and told Lincoln, we got to get off this train, or we got to go in early before the crowd masses at the train station. We got to get through Baltimore without the train getting stopped. And so the morning before the plot was supposed to happen, Lincoln went in disguised and went through Baltimore and into Washington, D.C. in the wee early hours of the morning, and came in, and nobody knew he came in. And this is a really good, it's a popular history. It came out a few years ago, but it's more of a popular history, but it was very well done. I thought Stashauer did a very good job in this book. I remember buying this one. I bought this one at Sam's Club. We were there shopping, and I saw that, and I thought, interesting. But it was, as the cover says, a notable book of the year by the Washington Post. But I highly recommend it. Thought it was good. This particular book is probably a favorite of Paul's. I'm definitely putting this one in there because of Paul, because he's always asking me if I've read it. I've had it for a while, have not read it, told him I'd read it, haven't read it yet, not because I don't want to, I just get sidetracked on things. So I need to really make a point of getting into this one and going through it. But it's by James Swanson. It's called Manhunt, the 12-Day Chase for Lincoln's Killer. And I know that Paul would recommend this one, so I'm taking this one off of Paul's recommendation list. Here's another one that was a popular history that I would say it's a very conservative version. It's very right-wing version, but it wasn't done too bad. I think that the Bill O'Reilly books in a lot of regards are a good attempt to bring in people to read about history that don't normally read about history. I'm not going to say that they're always the most academic, but I think they're fairly well done. And so I had gotten this one. These are all over the place, but I picked it up cheap and read it, and it was interesting. There's some stuff that I probably think is maybe a little too right-wing and maybe a little too conservative, but overall not bad. Again, remember the purpose of the book. It's to bring in, mass audiences into reading about history, and I think it does its job. But this is Killing Lincoln, the shocking assassination that changed America forever, by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard. And then the last one that I picked up but I have yet to read, it's one that I really want to get to. I absolutely love the cover, but it's Backstage at the Lincoln Assassination, the untold story of the actors and stagehands at Ford's Theater, by Thomas A. Bogar. And so I've been wanting to get to this one. I love the cover. I think it just looks neat. It's very appealing. I've been wanting to get to this one for a long time, and I wanted to throw it on this recommendations list because you don't usually hear about the people backstage. You always hear about the main characters in the assassination, but you don't usually hear about them. And so I thought this would be very interesting. So I wanted to throw that one on the list, despite not having read it. So there you are with question number 10. All right, we're ready for number 11. What's your favorite miscellaneous book about Lincoln? So a book that doesn't seem to fit in any one of the categories. So, kind of oddball books, but this would be a keyhole history also. I picked, there it is. And this one's, it's about Lincoln, but it's not about Lincoln. So Shooting Lincoln. And it's Matthew Brady, Alexander Gardner, and the Race to Photograph the Story of the Century by Nicholas Pister. This was awesome. This was super neat. So these two guys, Matthew Brady owned the studios for most of the photography, most of the famous photography that's going on during the Civil War. And then Alexander Gardner is the guy who did a lot of the pictures. He's not the only one. There were several of them, but he's one of the probably the more well-known ones. He did a lot of your classic Civil War battlefield pictures. But anyway, they have a split because he's getting credit for his pictures and he does not like that. And he wants to start his own photography studio and get going on in his own right because he's done a lot of good stuff. But it's all of his photography early on was coming out under Matthew Brady's name. And so he wants credit for his own work. And he should get credit for his own work. But anyway, when Lincoln was assassinated and they did the manhunt to catch everybody in the assassination plot, they put him under trial, found him guilty, and they're sentenced to be hanged. And so it's a race to see who gets to actually have the government permission to photograph the hanging of these guys and gal, because you had Mary Surratt in there also. But fascinating book. I thoroughly enjoyed that. That's one of my favorites. And then, the next one's a religious book. Where is it? Oh, right here. Lincoln's Battle with God by Stephen Mansfield, A President's Struggle with Faith and What It Meant for America. And this is one of those topics that can be tossed around by a lot of different people on polar opposite sides of the religious question. So I'm not going to get into all of that, but I did find it to be a good book. So glad I read that one. I would recommend it. Let's see. Number 12. Question number 12. What is a fun story you have relating to the purchase of an Abraham Lincoln book? Okay, so fun story. My wife, she's always asking me, because I mean, anytime I find a Lincoln book, if I don't have it, I buy it. And even little kids' books. I've even gotten into buying little kids' books. I don't have a bunch of them, but I got a couple of them. But anyway, so she's always asking me, why do you need another one? Are you kidding me? Why do you need another one? And so, for me, his life can be broken down into so many subgenres. There's so many ways to study Lincoln. And I'm like, I want to learn about that part of Lincoln. I want to learn about that part of Lincoln. One of the books that I was buying at the time was this one. And that was at the Jesse James, I think, or was it the deal next door? It might have been the place next door, but Jesse James Antique Mall. But I was buying this one by Tom Wheeler, Mr. Lincoln's T-Mails, How Abraham Lincoln Used the Telegraph to Win the Civil War. And I was buying this. This is when she asked me that question. Why do you need another book on Lincoln? Do you really need to learn about him using the telegraph? And I'm like, yes. Anyway, so it's just kind of funny, our back and forth on the topic of Lincoln, because she knows I love him, and I'm always buying new books about him. So I wanted to point out, when I say there's so many, his life is broken down into so many different subcategories, and I mean, they even have written books about individual speeches he's made, and I wanted to show you those real fast. Let me stand up for this. So, Lincoln at Cooper Union. It's by Harold Holzer again. This is one of my favorite books. I thought it was very well done, but it talks all about him traveling to New York to give this speech that really put him on the map. Okay, this is the speech that made him a national candidate. People had not really, in like New York and on the East Coast, had not really heard much about Lincoln until he gave this speech. This was a must-have for him. He had to give that speech. Another one that, let's see, Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation by Allen Guelzo. Everybody knows the Emancipation Proclamation. Was written in 1862, comes out January 1 of 1863. Let me bend down, maybe that'll help. There we go. This is Allen Guelzo, who's an excellent Civil War and Lincoln historian. One of my favorites. This is his story of the Emancipation Proclamation. Thoroughly enjoyed that. That's a good one. Let's see here. Lincoln's Greatest Speech. And this is one of my all-time favorite Lincoln books. And it's by Ronald C. White, Jr. But it talks about the second inaugural. And just the build-up to this speech and the prose that was used during this speech, absolutely beautiful. And by the way, a lot of these speeches, you need to go out and read them. They're very worth reading. So this one was phenomenal. Let's see here. And then the last one, I've got more, but I tried to limit it. Lincoln at Gettysburg by Gary Wills. And of course, everybody knows, the Gettysburg Address. That's one of the most famous speeches in all of American history. Although it's only, 2.5, 3 minutes long, but one of the most well-known. awesome book on that. So, let me put this book back while I'm sitting here. Yeah, so keyhole histories. They've got whole books written about just different speeches, and it's absolutely awesome. So, do you have a funny story about buying one? Number 13. What would you consider to be your holy grail of Abraham Lincoln books? So what's the one that I prize the most? Now, I've got a lot of them. I absolutely adore all of them. But this is the one that I like maybe the best. It's extremely one-sided. It is very pro-Lincoln. I mean, when you read it, it gushes with love for Lincoln. But I think you can ask just about anybody that's read Lincoln stuff. It's well done. It's very compact. Or what's the word I want? It's very. It's got everything you need. Anyway, Carl Sandburg, and most of you have seen these, and pretty much every library has the Prairie Years and the War Years. And so this is the Reader's Digest version, so it's both books all in one. And I have read this cover to cover. It's got pictures along the way to help tell the story. Oh, there you can see some of them in there. But this one was one of the first real big books that I read on Lincoln, cover to cover, and absolutely loved it. And like I said, I know it's very one-sided. I'm very aware of that, but I thought Sandburg did a phenomenal job with this book. And if you don't think, or if you're questioning how much I do like it, you'll notice I've got another version here. I've got a whole set of them here, and this red one here is a whole nother set of them. And I've seen other ones I've been tempted to buy, but I didn't want my wife questioning me too much. So, last two questions. And this next one's pretty interesting because I just got asked in the comments section, what are my top 5 Lincoln books, or could you make a video about your top 5 Lincoln books? And I put a comment back to him, and I don't remember who it was out there, so I apologize about that. But I put a comment out there that said, well, just wait, I'm going to be doing a Lincoln tag, an original Lincoln tag soon, and you'll probably be able to pick out the 5 out of that. But even if I don't, maybe I'll make a top 5 Lincoln books video. Well, I don't have to because it was one of the questions. I completely forgot it was one of the questions on the tag. So, what are the top 5 books in the Lincoln Library of Mr. Ruttenberg? Right up there towards the top, one of my all-time favorites, Doris Kearns Goodwin's Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln. And this one could have been doubled up for, oh gosh, where is it? The question about his political, number 5. This one could have been doubled up for that. But absolutely love this book. This is one of the best books I've ever read. This actually is not the copy that I read. I read maybe I have it around here somewhere. I have a paperback version that I read, and maybe I ended up getting rid of it. I've been trying to get rid of doubles, but I found this hardback version and absolutely fell in love, bought it, and I recommend this book. It's easy to read. It is big, but it's easy to read, fast-paced, tells you a lot about all of the people that were in the running for the presidency. I learned a lot of stuff in this, not just about Lincoln, but his rivals as well. But it did focus on Lincoln. So that is on my list of top Lincoln books. Okay. Another one, Lincoln in the 1850s, which I already talked about, by Don Fehrenbacher. Absolutely love this one. One of the best on the antebellum period. Highly recommend that. Here. I'm just going to put them on the ground there. The Abraham Lincoln, Prairie Years and the War Years. I'll pick out this version this time. So, by Carl Sandburg, that same book I had earlier. Lincoln's Melancholy. This is one that not a lot of people know about. If you're a Lincoln person, you know, but if you're not a Lincoln person, you might not have heard of this one. But Lincoln's Melancholy, How Depression Challenged a President and Fueled His Greatness, by Joshua Wolf Schenck. This thing's awesome. Highly, highly recommend it. Go get this book, read this book, and it just talks about Lincoln's battle with depression. And most people don't realize that he was at the point of committing suicide on a few different occasions. But he used his political yearnings and that thought that slavery was evil, and he used that to fuel his ambitions and gave him a purpose in life. I guess maybe that's the way to put it. Helped give him a purpose in life, because after he got voted out of the House of Representatives, he was going through a rough time period. Of course, a couple of those depression issues happened before he even got in the House. But he was kind of wondering, where's my life going, when he got voted out, and he found a new purpose. And then the other one that I really, really enjoy is Lincoln and Douglas, The Debates That Defined America by Alan C. Gelzo. And just talks about the Lincoln-Douglas debates of 1858 and how are we going to deal with slavery in our nation. And this was kind of a prelude to the 1860 election. Even though Lincoln lost the 1858 debate and Douglas gets re-voted in as the senator from Illinois, which really it should have been Lincoln, but they hadn't redistricted all of the stuff, and the way that they voted for senators back then is not the same as today. If it was the same as today, he would have been the senator. But anyway, that whole story is in this, and he uses the speeches and explains the speeches and what they were saying. Absolutely love this. This is a good one. Last question. If you had to recommend one book to somebody who is interested in reading about his life, what book would it be? Okay, so it kind of depends on my answer for this, because I know it says one book, but it kind of depends on the reader. What stage are you in your reading? So I would probably recommend one of the newer biographies, because it's just an easy to read because of the author's style. And There Was Light, Abraham Lincoln and the American Struggle. I thought John Meacham did a really good job with this. There are some areas where he kind of pulled punches and didn't. He does that in all his biographies. He sometimes doesn't tackle the toughest issues with the person that he's writing about. Sometimes he dances around stuff. But I thought still this is a very, very good biography, very readable, and I thought he did a wonderful job for somebody just coming into studying Lincoln, who is maybe a well-read person, just not maybe in the realm of Lincoln. So this is a good one to start, a good place to start. I also looked at, if you're looking for a real short one, this biography by George McGovern. It's in the American Presidents series. It's a little thing, but man, oh man, this was a good book. It hit most of the stuff. I mean, obviously it's brief because it's a small biography, but all of these books in this series are about this size. They're all meant to be. And this series was put together by Arthur Schlesinger Jr. and Sean Wiltz joined the cause. They're the editors of the whole series, and at school I've got every single one of them all the way to the present. I bought those for my classroom because I just thought that they were that well done. Now they're not all done by the same author. They got different authors all over the place. Some are better than others. There are a couple of them that are kind of snoozers, but this was one of the better ones. I thought this was very well done. And then if you're a student, like a middle school age student, I would go with Russell Friedman, Lincoln, a photobiography, because first of all, it's very well done. It is a little dated, 1988 Newbery winner. It is a little dated, but the stuff that's in it hasn't really changed. But for a middle grade reader, middle schoolers have short attention spans, and so you've got pictures and stuff to help build the mental image and to help refocus them every once in a while. And I thought this was a really good book, really well done for young readers. So highly recommend that. If you're a teacher and you haven't used that, you probably ought to. It's a good one, or at least have it as a resource in your classroom. So anyway, BookTube. This is one of the longer videos I've ever done. So we are now past the 41-minute mark. And so I better start wrapping this up. Again, this is the Abraham Lincoln book tag. 15 questions. If you've read enough about Lincoln, I'd love to hear your answers, because I'm always looking for new new books on Lincoln, new suggestions. Thank you to Paul Salley for creating these questions and sending them to me and having me do these. Again, I tag Peg at the History Shelf and Steve Donoghue. I'd like to see if you guys can do this tag and give some recommendations. Please look forward to next week. I'm going to try to do a couple original tags, history-type tags, on two subjects that I have not read a lot on: the Mexican War and the War of 1812. The Mexican-American War and the War of 1812. And I'm going to need your help, BookTube, in getting recommendations for those two wars, because I have a specific BookTuber out there who has requested that, and they would like recommendations and they want to hear what I have to say. The problem is I haven't read a lot on those, and I don't know if I have that many books that I can actually show. Other than maybe just doing a quick Google search, and finding some titles. So I'm going to need your help on that. I want to get some help and get some book titles so that this individual can do some heavy reading. So anyway, BookTube, if you've made it for 42, almost 43 minutes, kudos to you. And thank you for watching. I really appreciate your support. Thank you to all the new subscribers. I really appreciate that, and I hope that the content we're creating keeps you interested and gives you some book recommendations, stuff that you want to put on your TBR list. So until next time, BookTube, happy reading.